When your celebration of life is prepaid in advance, it becomes a gift from you to your family later, because no one should have to plan for a loss while they're experiencing one. Paying in advance protects your loved ones and gives you the peace of mind you deserve. Let us help you plan every detail with professionalism and compassion. We're your local Dignity Memorial provider. Find us at dignitymemorial.com.
This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
I used to think time was my enemy. My future wasn't looking good. So worried about the things I couldn't see. I couldn't see the things I could. I was aging fearfully, worrying my life away, when all along I should have been thankful for every day. Finally made a friend of time. Now you could say that I'm aging gratefully. Aging gratefully.
Broadcasting from the rolling hills of the beautiful Tennessee Valley, from the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains, across this amazing nation and spanning the universe, you're listening to Aging Gratefully. I'm your host, gerontologist Holly Kelly, bringing you exceptional guests and novel information to ensure you age great, live full, and embrace each extraordinary day for the incredible gift it is. Welcome, everyone, to the Aging Gratefully Show. We broadcast every Friday on the CTR network at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Greetings, amazing listeners around the world. How are you doing? I hope you're doing amazing. I hope you're happy, and I hope you're healthy. With the year we've had, well, perhaps we didn't previously, but even more so now, we definitely don't take health for granted. My goodness, I remind each of you to be proactive stakeholders in your Aging Gratefully journey, and we're always coming up with new and novel ways to do this. But one simple way to do it easy and quick is how? By smiling. That's right, and loyal listeners might only just have to hear Jim Beloff's opening theme song to our show, and you may already associate it with smiling. I hope so, because it's our signature pose here on the Aging Gratefully Show. We're into getting global smiling spandemics going every week, the only demic we're okay with, right? So many of you have shared how you love that we do get our Grin Fest on. But smiling isn't just something that makes you beautiful. It's good for your health. I can't emphasize this enough, but I will try. Think of every time you smile as a cocktail party in your brain, hosted by none other than your very own stress-defending molecules called neuropeptides. Now, do not underestimate the skill set of neuropeptides, because they know how to throw a party. And they're in charge of the guest list, these neuropeptides, and they invite the coolest of the cool kids on the brain block to pump up the party. That is dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. They are the fabulous fun ones on the block. And this trio calls themselves neurotransmitters. This is what happens when you smile. It's what I call a personal party mood lifter upper. Happiness prompting, stress reducer, alcohol-free, happy hour, self-care, that's shareable. I just don't know why we're not all going around smiling all the time. But I hope I've convinced you that smiling on some levels is oh so good for you. So today's Aging Gratefully Alphabet Soup for the Psyche is a simple quote, but one sometimes easier said than done. Smile more, worry less. Oh, if we can get that one down, the better we can live and more easily strive towards aging gratefully. Sometimes difficult considering the year we've had and unprecedented times we continue to face as a humanity and collective world. Of course, we can smile as much as we want to preserve the sanctuary of positivity and perspectives, but that doesn't necessarily protect us from disease. This we know all too well. And with the year plus we've had of COVID-19, there have been times when many have desperately needed hope, faith, faced fear, and battled all of the dire challenges we never expected. As healthcare heroes, service workers, so many in our vital infrastructure gave selflessly to keep the world and lives of others afloat, we wondered if and when life would ever return to anything like it was. Flash forward to today, and here we are with vaccines and millions of people already vaccinated. And we still have so many questions. Today's show is dedicated to getting the answers to the questions you have about what is next with getting vaccinated. Now what? As we move forward with a treasured guest you are going to absolutely love and appreciate. I receive, as you out there well know, innumerable guest proposals to be on the show, and diligent thought goes into each one I bring you. And this one, I couldn't hit reply yes quick enough. It came on behalf of the Cleveland Clinic. Let me tell you a bit about them. You already know this revered name. The Cleveland Clinic nonprofit multi-specialty academic medical center integrates clinical and hospital care with research and education. Their mission is caring for life, researching for health, educating those who serve, with a vision to be the best place for care anywhere and the best place to work in healthcare. Care priorities are patients. Care for the patient as if they are your own family. Here for one reason, to take care of patients known for exceptional care delivered by multidisciplinary teams. They challenge themselves to get better each year. Their goals are to touch more lives, relieve suffering, and provide every patient the best care and experience. Not my words, theirs, on their website at my.clevelandclinic.org under Mission, Vision, and Values. Cleveland Clinic has pioneered many medical breakthroughs, and it's no wonder U.S. News and World Report consistently names them as one of the nation's best hospitals in its annual America's Best Hospitals survey. Cleveland Clinic has been recognized as the #2 hospital in the world by Newsweek's World Best Hospitals 2021 list. Today, we're so fortunate to have with us staff in the Center for Geriatric Medicine and Program Director for the Geriatric Medicine Fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Ronan Factora. He completed his medical school at the Ohio State University College of Medicine and Public Health, then internship and residency in internal medicine at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. He came to the Cleveland Clinic to complete his fellowship in geriatric medicine in 2003 and has been on staff since 2004. His areas of interest include Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, functional impairment, and elder abuse. He is a geriatric medicine specialist with the Cleveland Clinic, focusing on the challenges and choices of aging and providing care to older adults. As vaccines become more readily available throughout the country, many older adults are receiving their vaccinations and wondering the answer to one important question: what now? Dr. Ronan Factora is here to share how he's advising his patients on what is safe and what is not once you receive the vaccination. It is with great pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Ronan Factora, to the Aging GreatFULLy show. I'm so excited you're here with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks for that greeting. I appreciate being here.
Oh my goodness. So I'm so excited to have you with us. And just first of all, I was wondering if you could tell us a little about yourself and what led you to the current field that you're in today as a geriatric specialist.
Yeah, so that's an interesting story. I did a rotation in geriatric medicine as a medical student, and it was in Florida, in Cleveland Clinic in Florida. And I went down there hoping to spend time in clinic as well as enjoy the area, the beaches and whatnot. But I ended up really rotating in a very busy environment with really good internists, and their focus was really interesting because we think about medicine and we match medicine diseases with treatments. But the focus for these doctors was in preserving function, preserving independence. And it's not to say that treating disease is important, but they really focused on how disease impacted a person as they get older, and they wanted to limit how that actually affected their ability to live their lives. And I thought that was really a great way to approach taking care of a person. And I actually followed that all the way through residency and up to now. It's just part of my philosophy of work.
It really became your passion. So incredible. Yes.
Yeah, it was all the patients that I see, it kind of reflects that on a regular basis.
That's awesome. Wow. So what has it been like? I can't imagine working through the pandemic as a geriatric specialist.
Yeah, it's been very challenging, especially early on when we really didn't know what was going on. The one thing that we did see for our practice was that a lot of the patients weren't coming into clinic, and it's not a surprise. We were in a time where we didn't know what exactly the coronavirus entailed. We were afraid of what was going on around us, and we tried to keep everyone safe by keeping them at home. So, where I spend most of my time is in the outpatient clinic. So many of my patients, they dropped their appointments. They weren't able to come in. They didn't have transportation. They were afraid. So the big challenge was trying to reach out to them and trying to find out how they're doing. So this is how we developed our plans for proactive outreach, and we identified those persons who really were at highest risk for bad outcomes, and we reached out to them through one of our programs called the GINA program to see how they're doing at home and provide them with support and services if they needed it, and because often they were afraid to leave or didn't have any way to leave. And then we also developed these other ways to connect for medical problems. So this is really the time where virtual visits really became very frequently used in clinical practice. So you still can have that face-to-face on a computer screen or on the phone. I can talk to my patients. That way I can do a limited examination. But we're no longer ignoring the medical problems that were kind of put to the side early on in the pandemic. And as these sorts of innovations had developed, it allowed us to really catch up more with our patients and make sure that their needs were continuing to be met. Because many of our patients, they do have medical problems that require surveillance, monitoring, just making sure they're doing okay. And you can't let them go for 3, 6, or 9 months without finding out what is going on at home.
Yes, I imagine that they were coping with a lot of fear. There was concern of isolation. So how was that to manage?
It's really challenging for them, especially when we found out that it was really our patients, our older patients, that were at highest risks for the bad outcomes related to the coronavirus. So not just the patients themselves, but the patients' families really wanted to keep them safe and really wanted to make sure that no one was around them that may be carrying the virus. And if you were sick, for sure you wouldn't go near them. This is a big concern for many of my patients that were also in these congregate living facilities, assisted living, independent living, even in the nursing homes, where there have been a lot more of these outbreaks present. So that really puts the person in a bind because you're stuck, you're by yourself, you're isolated. And for many of my older persons, part of their daily routine is to meet up with friends, meet up with family, socialize. In fact, many of the patients that I have who moved to these settings, assisted living and independent living, moved there specifically to be able to socialize with neighbors and friends and to be engaged in these activities that involved multiple persons. They wanted to continue to live active lives, and that was all put on hold during the pandemic. So fighting off isolation, trying to find ways to be creative to keep a person's mental health intact and try to stave off depression, that was a big challenge over the last year or more.
Absolutely. Yes. And I mean, even studies were saying that people who had pets were even faring better. Just having that other fur child in the home was helping stave off that feeling of isolation. Just so many challenges.
That's right. The screen can only provide so much in terms of human contact. The one thing that I think that we appreciate more after this pandemic is the importance of human touch. And that's one of those things that we've been really holding off on for a long time because we've been afraid of contracting or transmitting the virus inadvertently. And I think that shows us how important that is as a person for each one of us.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for the work that you do and everybody at the Cleveland Clinic. It's just so valued and appreciated. So here we are. Flash forward, we have so many vaccines out that several that are available. Now we have new fears. People are scared of the vaccine. Some people have them and they don't know how to what they can and cannot do. And there's just so many questions. And then we have people who read articles that perhaps aren't necessarily accurate. And so I think that we really just want to have you kind of share with us what we can and cannot do, because I received some questions from listeners. So I'm going to just go ahead and ask you a couple, and we'll just work our way through them. One listener said that they're not getting the vaccine because they said it changes your DNA. I'm happy with my DNA, and I'm not taking something that's going to change my DNA. Can you address that one right out of the gate?
Right. So they may be referring to the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, which uses snippets of the genetic makeup of the virus. So what the vaccine actually does is it gives your body the blueprints for a piece of protein on the surface of the virus, and it allows the body to actually recognize that this is a foreign object that has to be destroyed. And the mRNA does not rewrite your DNA. It's just information, code, instructions for what sort of things to look for to identify the coronavirus. And that's essentially what the vaccine provides. So I think that you don't have to worry about getting your DNA rewritten. I think that this is a very accurate way to actually allow your body to use its immune system to identify the virus specifically, and then destroy it before it actually becomes a problem. So, and that's the reason why the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines have been so effective. If you look at the data that is provided, 95% or higher efficacy rate, it's really very effective. So that's why it's a good idea to get that vaccine. Even the newer vaccines, they have different methods of providing protection, but still, you're protected from a lot of the severe effects of the coronavirus.
Yes, and because people have been isolated so long, I'm wondering, people that have been vaccinated, they want to know, hey, when can I get out there? I have an RV sitting in my driveway. When can I travel? When can I see my grandchildren? So a lot of people really have this question.
Right. And the way you want to look at the vaccine is that it just opens up a whole new world of possibilities for you. At this point, the way that we interact with people is based on some of these social distancing guidelines. But when you have the protection of the vaccine, you are actually able to interact with other vaccinated persons. And according to the CDC, maskless at this point. So now you can actually see people's faces. You can actually smile. You can actually appreciate a person's company a little bit more. Family members who are vaccinated also, you can spend time with them, probably indoors and out, small groups without masks. That again, it's one of those things that we weren't really able to do before the vaccines were actually made available. Even individuals who are unvaccinated, you can actually spend time with them and still feel safe, in outdoor arenas. So you can look at the vaccination process as a way to allow you to do more of the things that you haven't been able to do since the pandemic started. And I think that we're all so eager to return to normal. This is one more step along the way. And as each one of us gets vaccinated and more of the population gets vaccinated, then we get closer and closer to a normal type of existence. And I think everyone wants that.
Oh, we definitely do. Yes, we are certainly craving it. Is there, for somebody that has had COVID, is there a timeline that they have immunities after that they've had COVID-19? Is there a period of time that they are safe?
Yes. So when you have COVID yourself, you develop these antibodies, and they're present for anywhere from 3 to 5 months. So you're generally protected from getting it a second time during that period. It's very infrequent or rare to get infected a second time. It still does happen, and it just tells you that it's never a perfect system, but it's really better for you. But after that period, that's when the immunity wanes, and you become susceptible again to contracting COVID-19 the same way as before. And there have been some case reports that sometimes the second time you get COVID may be actually worse than the first time. So this is yet another reason why we kind of promote that even if you had COVID in the past, you should get vaccinated because it can still protect you from getting it again in the future. And we're still learning at this point how long this vaccine is going to work. But at least with the vaccine, you don't have to go through the illness, COVID-19 itself, to get the immunity. There are so many complications related to COVID-19, and it's not just the people who have passed away, and that type of consequence that we think about. We think about those individuals who developed COVID-19 and survived and have now long COVID, and these are the symptoms that have persisted for weeks or even months after a person gets over COVID-19, and including things like shortness of breath, fatigue, malaise, the sense of smell being lost, brain fog, and this is a pretty large fraction. So we want to save people from having to endure those long-term outcomes. And yet again, you got the vaccine to help prevent that. It's another reason why it's worthwhile to proceed.
Yes, and another question is, if you're vaccinated and you can be around other people that are vaccinated safely, does that mean while you have vaccine immunities, can you be, though, however, a carrier to other people that aren't vaccinated?
Right. Yeah, that is a good question. And the one thing that I have to point out is that these vaccines are never 100%. You still have a very small risk of contracting COVID-19. The symptoms are probably going to be mild. You probably are not going to end up in the hospital. And what they've also shown, the studies have shown that these individuals who do get COVID-19 and they've been vaccinated, you really don't shed a whole lot of the virus. There's still some that comes out. But the important thing is that the vaccine not only protects you as an individual who got the vaccine, but because you don't shed as much, it also protects the people around you. So when you do this, you do favors for two people, yourself and your family and neighbors, when you get the vaccine. So it's another reason for it to be worthwhile. So certainly when we're thinking about community spread, the vaccine will help to prevent this from spreading in the community.
It's been such a controversy with the masks. You're either, I feel like it's, the new question isn't to be or not to be. I started saying the new question is to mask or not to mask. That is the question. And so some people say the mask does nothing. And I go into this, are you kidding me? It's a barrier. Any barrier is something. I mean, I just, could you resolve this mask question for us?
Yeah, so you think about it, and you can look at this yourself. When you are sick and you sneeze and you cough, you probably have had the experience where you can see the particles come out of your mouth, and you can see them fly in the air and linger in the air for a while. I mean, you see it with your own eyes. I mean, there's videos, you can see people sneezing, you can see what actually comes out. And this is the reason why when you're sick with the cold or the flu, people ask you to cover your face or to cough into your sleeve, because we know that stuff comes out of your mouth that you can block. Now, the mask in any form, whether it's going to be a homemade mask or a surgical mask or an N95, is a barrier to keep that stuff that comes out of your mouth from flowing into the air. So it's effective. It works, particularly for the larger particles, but even for small ones, depending upon how porous the mask is. And there's data that shows that it's effective in collecting those particles, those germs. And the main thing for the mask is that it's not really meant so much to protect you. The N95 mask is effective in protecting yourself and the people around you. The primary purpose is to really prevent you from spreading coronavirus, if you have it, to people around you. So this is more important for those persons that may have no symptoms, for those people who are maybe spreading coronavirus asymptomatically, not for the ones who are necessarily feel sick or ill. When you do feel sick or ill, you really should just kind of keep yourself quarantined until you know whether or not you have COVID-19. But this is a way to really be considerate of your family, your neighbors, and we realize there are people who, a large fraction of folks who get COVID-19 who have no symptoms, but they still spread it. And this is the reason why the masks are still recommended. Even with the vaccine, you still have that very small chance that you can spread it. So this helps to protect other people around you. And then again, the vaccine that's necessarily 100%. So in some circumstances where you have a lot of people around you, it can still provide you with some protection. It's not as good as protecting the people around you, the mask, but it can still confer some protection. So those are all good reasons why the masks should really continue. At this point, even as the vaccination status goes up, until we get to a point where everyone's protected, and our scientists say, we're at this point now, we don't have to wear masks anymore. We should wear a mask as often as we're recommended. And I know that there's guidance from the CDC and others that says under what circumstances masks should really be worn.
I read an article where, in light of this, there were so many other things that were typically common things that people caught, like the common cold and the flu, and even stomach viruses and things like that, because of the social distancing and common rituals where people kiss each other on the lips as a salutation and a greeting. All of those things were they were decreasing. And those things were so much lower as a result of this, because of customs and just the way that, we normally get together, and just formalities. So I wonder if, as a culture and a society, if those are things that we should take a look at as how we greet, and if that's something that is something that we should look at. Is a mask something in our future that should be considered in certain situations?
I think that you're right. We learned that these strategies for reducing the spread of coronavirus have also been effective in reducing the spread of other things that we experience on a seasonal basis, because it's effective in spreading and in producing the spread of the types of organisms. So the viruses, not just the coronavirus, but any type of virus that is out there, whether it's going to be some sort of virus that causes a gastrointestinal symptom or influenza. So when we see periods during the year where we have ups and downs of these sorts of other infections, we have flu season. I know that for kids there's RSV. Those may be the times that actually mask wearing may be shown as effective, particularly if we're thinking about individuals who are at higher risk. I know I got kids in school this year. They really didn't have a lot of the sniffles that they're typically used to during the wintertime. And they actually were going to school, but they were maintaining social distancing. They were maintaining their masks. They were washing their hands all the time. So I think that a lot of the things that they may have caught along the way really got they were prevented from spreading because of all of the interventions that have been in place. So I think absolutely there would be a role for masks in the future, depending upon the circumstance. I hope it doesn't interfere with our social gatherings as much as it does now. Now, hopefully we have a lot more relaxation and we can actually spend more time really being relaxed and not being able to worry so much about the spread of germs and the coronavirus. But, we've learned quite a bit in the last year about how we can mitigate the spread of certain illnesses. And if there's another similar sort of epidemic in the future, then at least we have experience looking in recent years that shows us that these interventions are really effective.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's just interesting that, we have been able to kind of find that they may serve a purpose in reducing some of these other things that are happening. So very interesting. I'd like to take a quick commercial break, but on the other side of break, I know that there's several vaccines and some people either are overwhelmed by the choices or they have concerns regarding which one is right for them. So I was hoping you could address that on the other side of break.
No problem. I'll be happy to take care of that.
Wonderful. Don't go anywhere because this fantastic and important conversation will continue today. We're so grateful to be with Dr. Ronan Factora talking all things I'm vaccinated, now what? Or I'm thinking about getting vaccinated. What does that mean to me? So I'm so excited that he's with us. He's a geriatric medicine specialist with the Cleveland Clinic, and he focuses on the challenges and choices of aging and providing care to older adults. You can visit him, and please visit the Cleveland Clinic. You can check them out at www.my.clevelandclinic.org. By the way, I know you love our show's theme song. And for new listeners, that's Jim Beloff's Aging Gratefully. And you can find that on iTunes or Amazon Music in his album Dreams I Left in Pockets. Please go over there and give Jim some Aging Gratefully love. And special thanks to you, my awesome aging rebels tuning in from all over the world, Australia, Germany, Great Britain. Oh my goodness, just too many to mention. You are everywhere. And thank you so much for just sharing the show like you do and the downloads. And just, you're amazing. Thank you for allowing us to be awarded a top 15 show on aging on the entire planet. Have I told you since last week that you rock and you role model? Well, you do. And thank you so much. I appreciate each of you, and I'm grateful. I'm your host, gerontologist Holly Kelly, and we'll be right back.
I'm Elaine Tolan, a social worker from Gainesville, Georgia, and I love listening to the Aging Gratefully show every Friday with gerontologist Holly Kelly.
I have PenFed, that's a fact.
I have PenFed, that's a fact.
My credit card purchases get me cash back.
My credit card purchases get me cash back.
No one else gets these rewards.
Sergeant, that is just plain untrue.
What in tarnation?
Sir, PenFed's Paracash Rewards Card isn't just for military members. Anyone can get cash back on all purchases.
Ah, Figgins, you've ruined my favorite song.
PenFed Credit Union. Visit penfed.org/powercash. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.
The Latter Life Planning Institute is the ultimate guidance for life's inevitable destiny and your path to passionate aging and inspirational advanced care planning. LLPI offers tools that educate, inspire, and enlighten. Live vibrantly, plan thoughtfully, age dynamically. Visit LLPI for business and individual consulting services. Professional and keynote speaking, books, workshops, education, webinars, and resources. LLPI is here to transform your latter life living today. Visit them at latterlifeplanninginstitute.com. Live extraordinary, age dynamically. Visit latterlifeplanninginstitute.com.
When your celebration of life is prepaid in advance, it becomes a gift from you to your family later, because no one should have to plan for a loss while they're experiencing one. Paying in advance protects your loved ones and gives you the peace of mind you deserve. Let us help you plan every detail with professionalism and compassion. We're your local Dignity Memorial provider. Find us at dignitymemorial.com.
This is Dr. Ken Druck, and I'm the author of Raising an Aging Parent, Guidelines for Families in the Second Half of Life. And today, I am so honored to be on Aging Gratefully. Holly Kelly is a 1 in a billion person who is doing such a service worldwide by convening all of these important, critically important conversations about aging gratefully. And I'm just honored to be a part of it. Thank you, Holly, and thank you, Aging Gratefully, for the good work that you're doing in the world and how you're lifting all of us up.
Thank you so much, best listeners in the world. I'm an authority on that, and it's true. Welcome back to Aging Gratefully. I'm your host, Holly Kelly, here today with guest Dr. Ronan Factora, and he's a geriatric medicine specialist, and he's with the Cleveland Clinic. He helps older adults make the rest of the years the best of the years, and I know you, my awesome aging rebels, you are so about this conversation. So excited that he's with us here today. And thank you so much for tuning in. And if you don't know how to find us by now, well, you found us because you're listening. But did you know that we have over 200 and something teen episodes wherever you want us on your smart TVs and on your Apple devices and your Android devices and nearly every podcast platform available. And that we're more than a podcast. We're actually a radio show that airs on the CTR network. And then we go to podcasts. So just thank you so much for listening. Our listener appreciation shout out goes to the listener that left this review. Thank you so much. You wrote, deep and insightful. Holly welcomes speakers and listeners into her space with warmth and enthusiasm. Her questions are well thought out, and she exudes an understanding of both her topics and audience. Oh, thank you so much. So promo code goes to audience because I am always thinking about my audience, you guys out there. You can get $10 off my book, Sunrises and Sunsets, Final Affairs, Forged with Flair, Finesse, and Functionality, through 7/31/21. Visit hollykelly.com to use that promo code audience. So appreciate you. And you know what else I appreciate? Today's guest. That's right. What a great show. I'm loving it. I know you are too. Visit him at www.my.clevelandclinic.org. Dr. Ronan Factora is he's doing so much life-enhancing work in so many areas, including important conversations like today. As vaccines become more accessible and available around the country and the world, many older adults are receiving them and wondering what that means for how they interact, what is safe, so many questions. And today, he's here and he's helping us with the answers that we're seeking. So before break, we were wondering what is the choices that we have available. And people may be wondering what's right for them. And then they read the news and then they might go to Google and then they might say, well, maybe tomorrow I'll get that vaccine. I'm not so sure. And then something else happens. I read the statistics that so many people aren't going back for their second vaccine. And I had a third theory that I'm not sure that they really focused on in when they were really talking about why people weren't showing up for that second vaccine. But could you address that?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So, there are a lot of choices in terms of the vaccines that are available, and it's good to have so many options available. That means that there's a lot of vaccine available for the general population. The one thing to keep in mind, despite the variety of vaccines, is that they are all effective in reducing your risk of severe COVID symptoms and hospitalization and death. That's the key thing. And there are differences with each, for sure. Some are 2 shots, and there are some vaccines that are a single shot. The side effects vary from person to person or from vaccine to vaccine. And some vaccines are good for all age groups, but some are really more have been shown to be effective in those younger groups as well. So the Pfizer vaccine, I think, has been approved for those 16 and older. So those are the variances and the reasons why you would want to why one may work better for you, whether it's going to be because of age or because of convenience. And if you want 1 shot instead of 2, sometimes it's just availability and you have no choice but to get whatever is available. The key thing is that you get vaccinated. And if you do that, then you get the benefit of the vaccine and the protection that it confers. So that's the important thing. Now, just like anything else that is on the cusp of medical innovation and technology, we're continually learning about how the vaccine works. And the rare complications that occur with some of these vaccines are things that have been brought to light recently. And I think that there's a lot of information floating out there. It's good to know where the information that you're reading about is coming from. I think that it's good to have a reasonable amount of concern about side effects of the vaccine, complications of the vaccine. But you always have to weigh that with how many people have gotten the benefit, how many people didn't get symptoms, and you have to think about who were the ones that actually got the side effects. Was it something special about that population that makes them more at risk? And that really was one of the biggest concerns for the most recent blood clot complications, that there's a particular population of people that may be at risk, very, very, very small. But, once you put that fear out there in the community, you always wonder, well, am I going to be next? Is it going to be me? How would I know that I would be at risk? And that's where your reading about these side effects, these complications has to continue so that you can be more reassured that it's the right decision for yourself to get the vaccine. You should also not be afraid to contact your provider because most people have their own doctors. There's going to be a source of information from that doctor that you might trust more than the things that you read online. So it's good to get it from a trusted source. Ask your doctor. What do you, how would you address my concerns? What do you think about this side effect? Do you think that it's good for me? What sort of things would you be worried about in my circumstance? Most of physicians will probably be happy to address your concerns and to give you more information about how the vaccine might affect you, both positively and then negatively, and then you can make a more informed decision from that standpoint. So, the bottom line is get more information. If you have more questions, ask someone that you trust. Ask a provider who you've been seeing on a regular basis, whose information you find worthwhile and informative and also trustworthy. And that's the way that you want to proceed.
That's great advice for anybody that is on the fence about getting the vaccine. I'm really glad that you shared that. Yes. Yes, due diligence as a consumer, always great, and trusted sources. And so go to somebody that you trust and that you value and that you have a relationship with, that you are so comfortable. So what should we be concerned about regarding the new strains? We keep hearing about it, and what concerns should we have there?
Yes, so this is a virus that continues to mutate. And the one thing that we get worried about is whether or not the next mutation will be the one that will not allow the vaccine to work as well. And there are already some variants that are showing that, and particularly the one from Brazil, the P1, I believe, has a mutation that may be able to get past the vaccines that we have. And this is another part of the reason why we want to reduce the community spread so much, because the more the virus spreads through the general community, the more opportunity it has to change. And the changes are random, but you never know, with so many people being infected, which mutation is going to be the one that's going to be effective at making the vaccines less effective in the future. So that's yet another rationale for us to follow these guidelines and these recommendations with regards to social distancing and push the vaccination process as quickly as we can, not just necessarily here in the United States. We got to take care of our citizens and our population, but throughout the world, where the entire planet is actually affected by this virus. The virus is doing the same thing in this country and in other continents. So we want to be able to make sure that we reduce that spread as much as we can, not just here, but everywhere, because you just don't know where the next mutation is going to come from.
Yes, and I found it interesting that the close contact rule from the CDC and most companies seem to be using this, or many, 6 feet for 15 minutes or more with regard to possible COVID exposure, to others to stay at home and quarantine for 14 days. And for something that seems so contagious, it struck me for the 15 minutes part. And it seems like such a long time for something so contagious. And I was just wondering how you would respond to that.
So that's tough. The 6 feet is easier to explain, because the scientists have actually taken a look to see how far the particles that come out of your mouth actually go in air, in air that's not moving around. So if you're just talking, 6 feet is probably the distance where the particles are less likely to affect the person next to you. Mm-hmm. Now that's going to change with the wind, and if you're talking loud, the particles would go further away. And if you're singing, like a choir in church, it'll even go further away. I've heard like 12, 20 feet at times. Mm-hmm. So that science behind that is pretty well established. That 15 minutes really it's not just 15 minutes in a single period. It's actually 15 minutes cumulative. So if you're in an area where there's high risk for getting in contact with people who may be putting out the virus, 15 minutes is actually quite, you're right, it's quite a bit of time. Yeah, and that is particularly concerning when you're in places that are cramped, so crowded restaurants, crowded bars, indoor areas with very poor ventilation, even in outdoor areas where you have crowds and crowds of people and there's not a lot of movement. We've all been to football games and to fairs and festivals where just people are just packed to the gills. These are the areas where you have the highest risk for transmission, because people are very close. People are not moving very much. The air is not moving very much. And you have a higher risk of being exposed to people who are spreading the virus during that time frame. So that 15 minutes, I guess, was designated as the amount of time that's necessary to be associated with higher risk of actually contracting the coronavirus. So we just have to be mindful, particularly with our surroundings. When we're going to be in situations where there are a lot of people, or if we're not going to be moving around a whole lot, in and out of these kind of crowded locations.
Yeah, that just really struck me because I felt like I could catch it in, seconds or a minute. And if somebody did have it, I sure didn't want to be in the presence for 15 minutes. So it just kind of personally struck me as an average citizen that, to be in that kind of setting for 15 minutes just seemed, it seemed like a very long time. So
yeah, I agree with you. It's 15 minutes is a long time. It's cumulative. I think that if we see a circumstance where it's going to be crowded, we would just want to be in and out. Just like going to the grocery store, during the pandemic, we don't wander around as much. We don't sit in place. We have an idea of what we were going to get. We go in, we get our stuff, and then we leave. And that's that in and out and the ventilation is probably part of the reason why it might not have as much transmission in grocery stores. But in other circumstances, you just have to be mindful. And the bottom line is, with these numbers, we still have to be aware of what sort of circumstances we're putting ourselves in, and we just have to be mindful of what our surroundings are like, and then make our judgment based on your own personal idea of risk and these guidelines, whether or not the thing that you're planning on doing right now is really in your best interest, or if it's better to wait for a time that it's less crowded or maybe more opportune.
I think that I've been looking at it as necessary risk versus unnecessary risk, and kind of being mindful in that direction. And I think that's kind of what you're pointing at is there's certain things that one must do, and there's certain things that can wait. Do you think that we'll need a COVID vaccine annually, like the flu shot?
That's a really good question, and I think that there's a couple of factors that come into play here. And this is one is how long does the current COVID vaccine last? So even if there is no further mutation, and this is the same strain that floats around over and over again, if the vaccine doesn't confer protection for a long enough period of time, then we're going to have to get a booster anyway to make sure that we actually maintain that immunity. But if the virus changes and our vaccine doesn't work as well, the same way that we have that flu vaccine, every year the virus changes and we have to modify the flu vaccine to match the strain of the flu that is most likely going to cause illness. We might be doing the same thing for coronavirus. Now, this is the way that the flu virus actually started with the Spanish flu, and we've been pretty much dealing with mutations from the Spanish flu up to now, and that's why we have those yearly flu vaccines. So again, it's one of those things that we're still in the process of learning, and we'll probably know more information about it as this year progresses. That's going to be my guess.
Yes. And so what do you say to people who fear the vaccine side effects, or the other fear may be that it's experimental? Well, what would you say to them?
So we can deal with the experimental part first. So vaccines have been around for a long time. If you think about, when I talk to my patients, some of them really remember the polio epidemic, and they remember family and friends who contracted polio. And not so much the ones that died from polio, but the ones who had polio and then were disabled from it and had post-polio syndrome. They couldn't walk, they couldn't use their arm, whatnot, until the polio vaccine came out. And at that point, everyone was vaccinated, and we don't have to worry about polio anymore in this country. It was just a wonderful thing. So vaccines are not new, because they've been around for a while. But these newer vaccine forms and the way that they were developed, it really has been developing for several years. So there were other viruses that were present, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome is one, MERS, that was already being studied, and that was the foundation for some of the newer vaccines and the way it was actually being manufactured. So they actually had that process already being built and in place, and it was just timely that they were already developing the techniques for making a vaccine against that virus that could be applied to this strain of coronavirus. So to that degree, they just kind of switched gears and put in a different formula for the virus that they wanted to target, as opposed to the Middle Eastern virus that I was talking about. And that's proved to be effective. So from the standpoint of experimentation, the one thing that is really new is going to be the formula that they use, but the technique has been around for a while. So at least we can be reassured that these things, these more recent virus vaccine techniques, they've been established well enough in recent periods of time. And it's just a matter of finding out whether or not they are effective against the virus that they're targeting. And we're finding out that they in fact are. And then for the future, if there is going to be a booster or some kind of mutation that we have to target, we have again the same effective technique to develop a vaccine to target those strains if they're going to affect us again in the future in a way that we don't want.
Yes, and then what about side effects? Because some people are, concerned about how it's going to make them feel or the lingering effects.
I agree that of course none of us wants to suffer a side effect from a medication or from a vaccine. We always make our medical decisions thinking about risk versus benefits. What am I going to get out of it? What is this good it's going to do for me? And the one thing that I can say about the vast majority of side effects that people experience with the coronavirus vaccines is that they're transient and that they tend to go away in 1 to 2 days, and they're manageable with things like mostly with Tylenol or Advil or Aleve. So I think that from that standpoint, we can mitigate these side effects pretty well. And the other thing we keep in mind is what are we trying to do with these vaccines? What are they used for? So they're protecting us from this illness that has been shown to cause a lot of suffering. It caused a lot of people to die. It caused a lot of people to be in the hospital, and caused a lot of our hospitals to actually be overrun and overburdened. And it kept a lot of our patients who needed medical care beyond just the coronavirus. If you were coming in for chest pain, if you had an accident and you had to get surgery, if you had pneumonia, it was harder for them to find a bed as a result. And in some countries, there's no bed available because they're all occupied by COVID patients. So this vaccine helps to reduce the risk that we're going to go down that pathway again. So, weighing the risk and benefits, for the individual, I think that if we know that the illness that you can potentially get is going to cause you to have these problems and not just being in the hospital and, having these long COVID symptoms, that's something to keep in mind. But then also the impact for the vaccine on everyone around you. If you are not sick and if you don't have to go to the hospital, then there's one more bed available for someone who has to go to the hospital because they're having a heart attack, or if they need to be treated for pneumonia, or if they have to deliver their baby, or if they got into an accident and they have to have surgery to get a bone fixed, that sort of thing. So those are the things that we think about for the individual and also for the greater population. So this is how you can consider thinking about looking at not just how to treat the side effects for yourself, but what are the benefits that this is going to have for me. That's a good way to approach it.
Yes, and for the greater world. So yes, everybody's different, but I had I had the Moderna vaccine, and so my arm was a little sore, and it was nothing like the shingles vaccine, and I was fine. So it's totally dealable in my particular situation. I can't speak for what it would be for everybody individually, but I was happy to have the vaccine and grateful to have been able to do so. So that was my personal experience. So I just want to ask you important takeaways to keep in mind regarding your health. Just switching the dialogue here for the final moments of the show as you age. Totally love the work you do, admire the work you do, and I just want you to share with our global family of aging rebels. And I call us aging rebels because we push back on society's image of aging. We actually embraced the thought premise that we are bold, not old. So
I totally agree.
Yes. So what would you say to keep in mind and what comes to your health as you age?
So the key thing is to keep yourself busy. I remember hearing a geriatrician or geriatric rehab doctor say before that movement is the penicillin of aging. So, the things that I typically recommend for individuals as they get older, and I do this all myself. One is you want to make sure that you remain physically active, and the minimum is 30 minutes of cardio 5 days of the week. And the way I tell people is, even if you walk fast enough that you feel a little bit short of breath, you can count it as cardio, but more is better, more intensity is better, longer period of time is better, but that's the minimum. Number two is you want to do things to keep your brain active, and you keep on learning. It's that learning process that really helps to keep your brain sharp over time. So things like reading, doing crossword puzzles, playing a musical instrument, learning a foreign language, picking up a hobby like crocheting, gardening, whatever, anything that you're going to get better with over time. You just want to maintain that and have that as a routine during the week, something to do. And you want to make sure that you have an activity throughout the year. And there's people who don't do very much when it's cold outside, and they're used to being going outside. You got to find something else to do when the weather gets bad, so that you can keep yourself busy indoors as well. The third thing is to remain socially active. So, keeping contact and meeting up with friends, with family, community activities, religious organizations, church, wherever. That social engagement is so important to maintain your brain health, and having that opportunity to sit down, have a conversation with people, engage in activities where you're all shared and trying to achieve a particular goal, and maintain that sense of community. That is not just good for your overall brain health, but it's also good for your mood and your mental health. And all of that activity, physical activity goes with it, also provides benefits for you. So those are things that you want to do. You don't want to spend a lot of time sitting down at home watching TV. You don't want to be spending a lot of time not moving very much. You just want to keep yourself moving, keep yourself busy, maintain a routine as you get older. And that's really the best way to age in place and to maintain as much as possible your independence and your physical ability. You just got to keep on moving.
Fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. Would love to have you back on the show to actually have a show all about that. Absolutely would love to.
Be happy to come.
Wonderful. And so as we end the show, we have one question left, and that is, we'd like to know how you age gratefully.
Okay. So for myself, I give out this advice, but I got to put my money where my mouth is. So, I still have play the piano, and this is something that I continue to do, on my leisure time. I enjoy my work, and I certainly enjoy spending time in clinic and spending time with patients. So for me, it's there's a crossover between work and leisure almost, because I enjoy the things that I do at work. And if you find work that you really enjoy doing, then you should try to do it as long as possible. And then, of course, for me, trying to spend time with friends and family, and keeping up with all of the personal connections that I have in my spare time, that's important too. And these are all things that I try to work in, even with a busy work schedule, to find ways to connect with the people that are important in my life. Got to maintain those contacts throughout your life so that you can stave off loneliness and not be depressed. Those are so important.
So wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. We really appreciate the hour that we've had with you, and it's been so insightful and educational. We appreciate the work, wisdom, gifts, gems that you bring to the world. And just thank you so much for being our guest today, taking time out of your schedule to do so.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. You've been listening to Aging Gratefully, and I'm your host, gerontologist Holly Kelly. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed our message, I invite you to subscribe and share it with others. May you remember to never act your age, and that age is just a number. And may you enjoy and embrace the coming week in the spirit of gratitude. Until we meet again, here's to living your best life now.
I used to think time was my enemy. My future wasn't looking good. So worried about the things I couldn't see. I couldn't see the things I could. I was aging fearfully, worrying my life away, when all along I should have been thankful for every day. Finally made a friend of time. Now you could say that I'm aging gratefully. Aging gratefully.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.